pretty dark one or a lighter one. So thanks to Gerhard, we do the lighter one. You made my choice for me. Okay, this one actually is set in Britain, where I'm from mainly. Set in the county of Woodford. My relatives live around Stonehenge. You know where Stonehenge is? You know, I could throw stone at Stonehenge. I grew up in all over the world, but my roots are in Britain and Wales, England and Wales. But anyway, this story had its nascence. That's a nice long word for birth. And there, actually, reminds me of a gentleman I knew as a boy, but this is fiction. Okay, I've taken his hobby, as it were, and changed it into something that is, I hope, interesting. Anyway, I titled this The Lettered World of Eric Woodford. The Lettered World of Eric Woodford. And all these names in the story are in my family tree. You know, the Woodfords, the Hinders, the Dickoons, etc. So I feel that's anyway. Okay, here we go. The Lettered World of Eric Woodford. Eric, you've got some post. Mrs. Woodford pointed her 13-year-old son to a pale green envelope on the kitchen table. Eric, still out of breath from running home, gazed in wonder at the envelope with two German stamps aligned neatly in the top right-hand corner and the dark blue label stating Luftpost in the top left. It was the first letter ever addressed to him. Eric Woodford, 8 Laburnum Close, Pusey, Wiltshire, England, written in a square, boyish hand. His first urge was to rip it open, but no, he caught himself in time. That would be desecration. So he fetched a knife to open this miraculous emissary from across the North Sea, and as he did so, turned it over and read along the top of the back. Absender, Gunther Ernst Waldmann, Regenstrasse 14 or 14 if you want, Eisenkirchen, Bayern, Deutschland. Oh, Mum, I hope he has written some of it in English. I told him that I'd just started German. He slipped the pale green rectangle clearly across the top. No careless ripping of this wonderful arrival. One that he would look after carefully. He read the first half of the 3-page letter attentively. He writes in English, and then in German. He read aloud, I have 14 years. My best sports are football and bicycle cycling. I love to in the mountains cycle wander, mountain up and mountain down. Right? So berg auf berg. I also like to, in my kitchen, my mother help. Yesterday, I with my sister Renata, a very nice Black Forest chocolate cake make. Eric chuckled, oh Mum, his English is so funny. With a smile, Tina Woodford looked at her youngest and asked, and how is your German? Eric answered cheerfully, not perfect. I bet he's had a good laugh at my mistakes. But that's the whole idea. Mr. Metcalf, our German master, told us that people in Germany would really help us, writing pen pals in Germany would really help us to learn German. Mrs. Woodford agreed and added wistfully, I wish I'd had a pen pal in France. Maybe I would have learned some French that people would have understood. Our class enrolled in Dr. Lutzon's pen pal club in Copenhagen. Not all the addresses were in Germany. Each address came in a sticky label which Mr. Metcalf put into a box, and we had a lucky dip. Terry Hansen got the address of a girl in Austria, and Peter Biles got a boy in Liechtenstein. They issue super stamps, Liechtenstein does. We all had to agree to have another pen pal, perhaps 2, from anywhere in the world, who would write first. So I should be getting some more post soon. I'd better get my German dictionary and translate the rest of this letter. Tina Woodford looked warmly at Eric, whose face glowed with pleasure as he went upstairs to his bedroom to get his German-English Wörterbuch or dictionary. I've never seen him take to any form of studying so willingly, she remarked to herself. It'll be a good balance to cricket, football, and athletics. Several weeks later, after a furious exchange of letters between Eric and Jutta, a letter arrived. Fortunately, after Eric had left to school, it was in a long email envelope in the top right-hand corner with 3 stamps with rampant lions on them, and in the top left an email sticker with Ilma Posti on it. Turning it over, she saw that the sender was Heikki Toivonen from Helsinki, Finland. She wondered, Heikki, a girl or a boy? Her ignorance slightly annoying her. But it's from Finland. He'll be overjoyed. The country of his hero, Nurmi. Eric had recently started athletics at school and just become aware of the Flying Finns, whose running prowess he had expounded to the Woodfords on several occasions. I hope the letter's in English. He knows no Finnish. She recalled her son's frustration in not knowing how to pronounce some of the Finnish runners' names. He'll be home around 6. It's cricket tonight. At 10 to 6, the kitchen door burst open. Eric rushed in. Mum, I made 26 not out and bowled Peter Biles with a googly. You should have. And he stopped midstream as he saw the letter that had been put leaning against the teapot. Oh, Finland! Oh, boy! Itching to tear it open, he calmly slipped the long envelope with a knife. Listen, Mum, he went on to read. I am Heikki Toivonen, a boy of 14 years. I am living in Helsinki, Finland, capital city. Do you know of Finland? It is a Scandinavian country, next by Sweden and then Russia. Norway also has border to the north. It's a small country, only 4 million of peoples. We are 5 in our family, my parents Pentti and Ilka, my sister Lisa Maria of 18 years, and my brother Juha, 16 years. I like very much urheilu, running. I am Finnish, so therefore I like very much history of Finnish runners. Do you hear of Flying Finns? And do you know of sauna, steam bath? Beaming, Eric waved the envelope about, and a small photo fell on the table. It was of a young Nordic boy dressed to the nines in Sunday best, with a high collar and a white bow tie. Later in the letter, Heikki explained, I sent you my confirmation photo, confirmation into Lutheran Church, big religion of Finland. Look, Mum, he passed the photo to his mother, and he knows about the Flying Finns. Boy, I can't wait to write to him. Hey, see his address? He lives on Urheilukatu. That's Athletics Street. As a lively youngster bounded upstairs, Tina Woodford called out, don't forget, homework comes first. She knew her son's enthusiasm that could cause him to put first things last. At 9 o'clock, Eric tumbled downstairs to the TV room, full of questions about Stonehenge, the Pusey Vale White Horse, and King Alfred. Why all this sudden interest in local history? Both asked Hilary, his sister, older by 4 years. Well, both Gunther and Heikki have asked me about Pusey. In fact, Heikki read up about the area. And really, there's lots to tell them. Now, just a second. Who is Heikki when he or she is at home? Queried Mike, 6 years older and the eldest of the 3. He's Finnish. I got a super letter from him today, didn't I? He knows about the Flying Finns, and he's a runner too. Mrs. Woodford agreed. You certainly did. He seems to be a good lad. He likes running too, so you'll be good pen pals. With a twinkle in her eyes, she added, Hilary, I think you'd like him too. He's a handsome boy. Hilary, perhaps a little miffed, just shrugged her shoulders as Mike teased her. Mum, don't tell David that. He's a jealous fellow. Hilary made a face at him, but she knew that her boyfriend got jealous for no good reason. Without urging, Eric rushed upstairs and soon galloped down with the letter and photo. Even Mike acknowledged, serious-looking cove, but he's a looker, all right. Yes, it's his confirmation photo. He's Lutheran. Do you have a frame, Mum? Just a small one for it? Mrs. Woodford nodded. Let me see. Yes, I think there might just be one that fit nicely in the odds and ends cupboard in the chest of drawers by the sideboard. Eric soon found it among the long-forgotten bric-a-brac and put the photo in the frame which just fitted. As he trod upstairs back to the room, he looked at the magically fine photo in the now handsome frame. He wondered at the occasion in which it had been taken. What was it like to wear a high collar and a white bow tie? He stood it carefully on his desk between the 4 pale green envelopes from Germany and the new arrival from Finland. Soon, the third pile of letters started to appear on the desk. These had Portuguese stamps and were from a Maria Regina da Silva from Queluz, Portugal. Tina Woodford was surprised at the first letter, but Eric reminded her that they were asked to have 1 or 2 surprise pen pals. Okay, responded his mother, but no more, dear. I know you. Sometimes you go overboard on things. Just look at your stamp collection on all those cigarette cards. They're everywhere. Anyway, 3's a nice number and it's good, but this one's a go. I must say that all 3 seem very nice youngsters, and their English is very good considering. With a serious look, Eric addressed her. Look, Mum, I want to talk to you about that. Remember what I said about Bilesy, Peter Biles? He got an address from Liechtenstein, lucky fellow, but he hasn't written yet. Actually, he says he doesn't like writing letters. And so I could have the address if I want. Can I have it, Mum? Please. I've looked up Liechtenstein in our geography textbook. It's a very small country in the Alps, and it's not got as many people as Chippenham. And they issue some great stamps. Seeing his eagerness, Tina Woodford relented on one condition. Okay, but only if Mr. Metcalf says it's all right. I'll speak to him at parent-teachers night next week. And she did so. He answered without a hesitation. Oh yes, Mrs. Woodford, that'll be fine. Not everyone likes writing letters. And of course, there's no coercion. Having a pen pal in Germany has certainly helped Eric. I've no doubt he'll come first in German this year. Later that evening, Tina Woodford also had a talk with Eric's sportsmaster, who had nothing but praise. His running was certainly improved. In fact, we're hoping that he might win the age group in the Wiltshire Cross Country Championship. He's a surprising lad. Recently, he started running with a stopwatch in his hand. Tina grinned and explained, that's just like Nurmi. Nurmi? Papa Nurmi? Mrs. Woodford, you surprise me. I doubt that there's more than a couple of dozen people in Wiltshire who know much about Papa Nurmi, even sportsmasters. Then light dawned upon his face. I see. The stopwatch. Nurmi's trademark, the most famous of the flying fins. Tina Woodford repeated the flying fins. You'd know lots about them if you lived at number 8. You know, his dad would be very pleased with Eric, very proud. Tom was quite a good runner himself. He ran for the RAF, you know. She stood for a moment, remembering Tom Woodford in his RAF uniform, a rear gunner who failed to come home from a mission right towards the end of the war. Later that night, Tina Woodford gave her permission, and another pile of letters started accumulating with the beautiful stamps of castles on them. And along with them came beautiful postcards of castles and the Alps. Their sender was Hans-Peter Wenzel of Schaan, Liechtenstein. His birthday was just 3 years before Eric's. Knowing that postcards, birthday and Christmas presents would cost Eric got gardening jobs, weeding and mowing lawns, and doing part-time delivery assignments with Marshall's Bakery. Then a year later, he got a full-time paper route, which financed all his hobbies: stamps, cricket, football, and, of course, his burgeoning worldwide correspondence. By his 16th birthday, he had 8 pen pals, all through the auspices of Knudsen's Pen Pal Club, one of whom was in Denmark itself. After an exchange of 6 letters and several postcards, Hans Peter and Liechtenstein had fallen silent, with no answer to 2 letters of inquiry. The 6 letters were carefully placed in their minimally undisturbed envelopes between sheets of cardboard that had been backing to writing tablets. On the top sheet was written the words "exchange ended," and briefly the possible reasons why. He was the first to lose contact, and Eric realized he would not be the last. Maria Regina in Portugal took her time answering, and she was always so busy. One of these days, his letter would probably go unanswered. These ends of contact came as no surprise. Many of his classmates had ceased writing to their German pen pals. Quite a few of them were surprised when he showed them his den with the piles of letters, the photos, and the corkboard now filling up with postcards, neatly stuck to it. Peter Bilesy looked at Hans Peter's letters from Liechtenstein and said, "I'm glad you wrote to him." But he stopped writing. "Yeah, perhaps he's like me," Bilesy added. "I've never liked writing letters, even to aunts and uncles thanking them for presents." The loss of Hans Peter's letters had been more than compensated with several new contacts from far and wide, as Australia, Ghana, and the Falkland Islands. Hugh Green in the Falklands was as avid a letter writer as Eric. His long, neatly written letters opened up a world of the South Atlantic community to Eric, who became very knowledgeable about the different kinds of penguins, sheep, and the kelpers the Falklanders named for themselves. The week after Eric's 17th birthday, Mike, now 22, decided to follow in their father's footsteps and join the Royal Air Force. Soon afterwards, Hillary left Pusey for a better paying job in devices. This left Eric at home with his mum. The advanced level exams were coming up, and he intended to do well so that he could eventually enter for law. His intention to go into law pleased Tina. She realized that he was being selfish, she was being selfish, but she hoped that he would stay close by. There were plenty of law firms in Swindon, Salisbury, Devizes, Marlborough, and even Pusey. Like all mothers, to her the idea of an entirely empty nest was not attractive. He'll probably marry, but if he works nearby, it will really be so much cheaper to stay at home. I can always move into the granny flat next door. She watched as he passed his A-levels and without difficulty, and eventually ended up in law. He got a position with a law firm in Marlborough, just a few miles down the road. Girlfriends came and went. The most serious had been Vera Titcomb. And things looked serious until one evening, he and Vera came into the kitchen after visiting her relatives in Devizes. There on the kitchen table, leaning against the teapot, was a letter from Becky. It could have been a twin to the first letter years ago. Ah, a letter from Becky. Eagerly taking up the letter, he carefully slit it open with the letter opener, a present from Mike 2 Christmases ago. I wonder how he did in the Finnish Olympic trials. Probably not too well. He's been very busy with his dad's construction business. As he read the letter, Mrs. Woodford noticed that Vera didn't look too pleased. Impatiently, she blurted out, "Oh, Eric, come on. You can read that letter later. I've got to get home. You and your pen pals." She added irritably, "Really? They're just for kids." Young Susie is one of them in France. Eric looked at her steadily before answering in a very controlled, measured voice. Just for kicks. Well, Becky and I have been friends for a long time. Since I was 13, wasn't it, Mum? Tina Woodford nodded. That's right, Beth. The year you started taking German. You were that excited because you knew about those flying fins. She looked knowingly, perhaps with a slight warning, at Vera. But Vera, insensitive to, or not caring about, the thin ice she was treading on, continued, well, eventually all things come to an end. You really won't have time for pen pals when we settle down. You'll have too much too much to do than write letters to strangers. To strangers. It was all Eric said, and all he needed to say. Mrs. Woodford realized that it was probably the end of Vera. She quite liked the girl, but she was sure that it would take more than Vera to sever relations between Eric and his correspondents, particularly those of many years. Why should he give them up, she asked herself. He's grown up with them and knows them better than he knows Vera or anyone else, perhaps. I think it's the end of Vera. And she was right. Vera had little idea why Eric had suddenly dropped her. After her, girls came and went, but with less and less frequency, as Eric, now confirmed in his job in Marlborough, settled down into a life looking after his mother and becoming a confirmed bachelor. With the passing years came some new interests. The immaculate lawn and usually weedless flower beds were witness to his gardening skills. The excellent photographs, which often replaced postcards of the area, showed that he'd become an accomplished photographer. However, along with gardening and photography, his old interests, cricket, football, and correspondence, remained as strong as ever. In football, he was a fervent supporter of the Gunners, Arsenal. And locally, he often went to Swindon to watch the Robins or Swindon Town at their home games. In correspondence, he always had at least a dozen pen pals on the go, usually several more than that. However, as the years passed, he found it more difficult to find innocent correspondents who didn't have a hidden agenda. Once a marriage proposal came in the very first letter from the Philippines, and he would never forget the gentleman from Liberia who, after only 2 exchanges of letters, decided to send him a consignment of ivory goods to sell with a commission for himself as an agent. Shocked, Eric refused to accept delivery of the huge parcel and put the matter into the hands of the British Customs, as trade in ivory was illegal. And that happened to me, so Then there was the change in technology, which influenced the world of pen palship. For Eric, the advent of the internet took much of the romance out of contacting people from afar. He tried to take part in exchanging e-letters with several people, but there was a world of difference. Gone was the romance of the click of the front door letterbox and the fall of the letter or letters onto the doormat. The careful slitting of the envelope and then sharing, letter in hand, a few minutes of news and imaginatively the voice of the sender. That could not happen with email. The computer screen, void of personality, seemed to suppress the personalities of those who used it. Perhaps it involved the lack of handwriting. He wasn't sure. He felt that that was the case with himself. He just could not write a warm, chatty letter straight onto the screen, just as he hadn't been able to do at a typewriter. Somehow, what he wrote came out in short, jerky sentences, lacking connectives and consequently rhythm. The only way he could write a decent email letter was to write it out first in longhand and then copy it, resisting any attempt at abruptness. The pen was to him an extension of his being, and his thoughts ran through it unimpeded onto the paper. However, despite those human and technological hurdles, his family of old-fashioned pen pals actually increased, particularly in areas where the internet mercifully had not yet fully penetrated. Elvira in Clibas, John in Malari, Peng in Lhasa, to name a few. And then there was Monica in Norfolk Island, who turned out to be a distant cousin. She too, like the Woodfords, was related to Fletcher Christian, who had led the mutiny on the HMS Bounty against Captain Bligh. The internet had caused Eric to take up family history. The comparative ease with which records had become available caused him to have great success in this new pastime. At Tina Woodford's 90th birthday party, Eric explained to neighbors how much easier genealogy had become. So many records being put online. The internet is really good for searching out the dead, but not so good for contacting the living, he quipped. Neatly lettered charts and glass frames hung on the sitting room walls, and Tina Woodford nodded her 90-year-old head at them. They showed family lines that went back to William the Conqueror and beyond. He never does anything by halves. No, does Eric. I noticed that when he was just 13 and started his worldwide family. Henry Hinder, a newcomer to the neighborhood, didn't understand and asked about the worldwide family. Eric took him upstairs to his den that had once been Mike's bedroom and showed him wall-to-wall cupboards full of postcards, wall-to-wall corkboards, full of postcards, and several shelves loaded to overflowing with piles of letters neatly wrapped between cardboard halves, all arranged in military precision. Picking up 3 hefty piles, Eric said sadly, "These are from Gunther, my very first pen pal from Eisenkirchen, who we wrote for many years, even after he was married, but then he stopped." Remembering Vera Thickhorn, he added, maybe his wife stopped him. Henry Hinder soon realized that here was the real world of Eric Woodford, who was now more alive than he had ever been downstairs. With animation, he pointed out to other piles. And here, he exclaimed, are 2 of my oldest friends, of 50 years or more. Heikki in Finland and Hugh in the Falklands. I've met both of them. Heikki ran a bit for Finland, and I met him at the athletics meeting in White City. And Hugh was a member of the Falklands shooting team when they came to the Commonwealth Games in Cardiff. He won a bronze, their only medal. Then, moving to the table laden with photographs in frames, he picked up 2. Look, here they are with their families. And he pointed to 2 boys, one in each photo. They named 2 of their boys after me. There's Eric in Stanley in the Falklands, and there's Erkki in Helsinki. Of course, they're grown up now. Eric's taken up Hugh's farm in West Falkland, and Erkki's become a useful ice hockey player in the Swedish National League. Do you know they both remember my birthday? And I never forget theirs. 4 years later, in early September, birthday cards arrived from far and wide, including 1 from Sweden and 2 from the Falklands, but none from Finland.